Today, women journalists are an integral part of the news industry, having near equality with men on television, radio, and the printed page. However, after World War II, the newsrooms of most newspapers were strictly for men only. Female journalists were banished to the women's pages. Rather than seeing this assignment as a barrier to good reporting, they used the women's pages as a platform for change, to bring issues to the attention of American women.
You know, when I've taught journalism history, we go all the way back to Nellie Bly. And it's a fascinating history to see how the role of women in journalism has changed, as has the role of women in society, politics, business, everything. You know, journalism's not alone in having sort of been behind the curve.
During World War II, men had little to no choice but to employ women as reporters. This led to multiple women working in factories as grease monkeys and riveters, and also as war correspondents. Eventually, women found a way to transition into media as well, but as soon as the men came back triumphantly from the war, the women were forced to move into the women's pages.
They wrote about the women who made a difference in their communities. So they wrote about women who were fundraisers, who created libraries and kindergartens. They wrote about women who were pioneers. So the first women who, say, headed a bank, or the first women who were promoted in certain industries.
And these women's pages were extremely prominent, focusing on lighter topics such as parenting and fashion. Male editors, who were in charge of checking the content produced by the women's pages, largely believed that they were unimportant to society and, in turn, stopped checking it as much. Therefore, women began to write about the women's suffrage movement and sparked a revolution that would soon lessen the gender bias gap.
As far as bias, I think there probably was. I know there was. There was a great deal of bias for many, many years for women in the newsroom. They had to really kind of claw their way to their positions of power, being executive producers and presidents of networks and being main anchors. That took a really long time.
Newsrooms are not noted for being paragons of management virtue. Some would say many newsrooms have truly toxic cultures, although I think it's getting better. And I think the conditions for women in journalism have improved dramatically over the 30-plus years that I've been involved in the field.
And due to the toxic cultures in the newsrooms, women's clubs were founded, which were the main pioneers in the women's suffrage movement. They hosted rallies, protests, sit-ins, and marches, all working towards equality in the workforce. These events were an overall success. However, the media reported it with a negative tone, with intent to mitigate the projected effects of the movement. These negative reports attempted to drive women back to the women's pages. However, the strong women of the generation did not back down, as they ignited a spark that would not be put out. With many leaders in the movement, such as Marie Anderson and Dorothy Journey, the movement grew even stronger. They built kindergartens and educated women on why having equality in the workforce was important. This entire movement had both short-term and long-term effects, as women began to report on the front pages and made strides seen never before in American history.
That's one of the most amazing things of that time period that people don't talk enough about, is that they were a bridge between World War II era and the women's liberation movement. But they made such a difference, and they almost always created moments for women that came after them to go ahead. So the women that were promoted in the 70s and 80s were a direct connection to the women of the 50s and the 60s.
You know, I got to be honest with you. I've been in the field for 6 years now, so not too long. But within those 6 years, I can't tell you that I've, been stopped from doing different things because I'm a woman. On the contrary, I think that I've been able to walk through different doors and have been given other opportunities because I am a woman. I think that women now are powerful enough and have made such great strides in newsrooms, both locally and nationally, that women can cover incredible stories. I mean, just watch like Christiane Amanpour, somebody who's worked for CNN and for PBS. I mean, she's out
in war zones covering stories. There are a lot of brave, powerful women out there covering extraordinary stories that they would not have had the opportunity to cover before.
And as we enter the next decade, the fight for equality continues as our generation begins to diversify with women entering the workforce every day. Just here at American Heritage, multiple young women report the news every single day. With only 37% of the news being produced by women nationwide, the young women in the industry look to sway those percentages to a more balanced one.
I would tell an aspiring female journalist to learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, look up, not down. I think now with our phones and iPads and things, we look down too much. You need to look up. We are missing out on things going on in life. So I would say, don't text somebody, call them. Have a personal human communication with people. There's nothing like that face-to-face with someone. So as an aspiring journalist, I would say, broaden your horizons, get out there, seek opportunities to meet people and to find great stories. Because you're not going to find great stories looking down, you're going to find great stories looking up.
To all the younger female journalists, I would say to just stay true to yourself, work really hard, and believe in yourself. Because despite what everyone tells you, as long as you believe that you can do it, and as long as you let that passion fuel you and motivate you and make you strong day after day, then you'll be fine.
I find new women every week that did amazing things but have been forgotten by historians. And I think that's the big lesson about women's history, is that we think there's one or two or three people that are special, and it's just that we forgot the rest. They did so much, particularly for the generations that came before them. They had no idea that what they did was such a big deal and how much it would matter to my generation or your generation.
In conclusion, whether it be the marches and protests or the exploitation of the women's pages, women throughout history have made large advancements in the strive for equality in the workplace. Thanks to all these women journalists who fought relentlessly and diligently, we can now say that they have made the most significant advancements in successfully eradicating the gender gap. And now, as society continues to develop and women further integrate themselves into the workforce, it is our job as the next generation to finalize their mission and successfully put an end to the gender bias gap.